One of the really cool tools that we had when rolling out VMs is the concept of using a template. We covered that many nuggets ago. And one of the benefits of a template is that we can crank out VMs with all very similar properties over and over and over again. And if we had multiple ESXi hosts, as we have here, we have 3 of them, ESXi 1, 2, and 3, and we are going to be rolling out additional hosts, we could use features such as auto deploy, along with a host profile to identify the exact settings we want to roll out with that ESXi host when we deploy it. And besides using a host profile for rolling out new ESXi hosts, we could also use host profiles to confirm that each of our hosts currently have a specific setting. For example, let's say we forgot to set NTP settings on our ESXi host, or we thought we had, but we wanted to be sure. What we could do is create a host profile that specifies the time configuration, and as part of the time configuration, we could point to the correct NTP server. In our topology, it's 192.168.1.100, which is our Windows server right here, that's acting as an NTP server. So we could have a host profile with just that parameter if we wanted to. And then we could associate each of our ESXi hosts with that host profile. And then we can click on the button to check for compliance. And that would tell us, yes, all the hosts comply with that setting for time configuration. Or if we had a host that didn't comply, it could tell us that as well. Here in the vSphere web client, logged on as administrator at nuggetlab.com. To work with and manage our host profiles, we could hover over the home icon, and then we can click on home. And here on the home page, we have the option for host profiles right here. We can click to go directly there. Or over on the left-hand side, we have an option for policies and profiles. We could click that. And then from there, we can click on host profiles. So by default, we don't have any host profiles. So to create a host profile, we can click on this icon right here, the little plus symbol, to extract profile from a host. So we'll click on the plus symbol. It's going to show us our 3 ESXi hosts that we have. Let's use ESXi2 as our guinea pig. So with it selected, we'll click on Next. And let's name this host profile for NTP. We'll click on Next. Here's a summary, and we'll click on Finish. Now this part does take a few minutes. It's basically extracting all of the settings from the host ESXi2 and putting them into this host profile that we're creating. If we click on Recent Tasks, it can show us the progress, and we'll simply give it a few moments to complete. Alright, now that it's complete, let's go ahead and minimize the recent tasks. And there's a little problem that we have with this new host profile that we just created, and that is it has all of the settings regarding ESXi2 as part of it. So what we want to do is edit this host profile and simply take away all the details and specifications other than the time settings. So to do that, we can go ahead and right click on this host profile. And then from the drop down, we'll click on Edit Settings. So we can change the name if we want to. We'll click on Next. And it's got 5 major categories regarding the settings that it extracted from ESXi2 that are part of this host profile. So we can expand these by using the little arrow to the left. And if we don't want the settings, for example, from anything in Advanced Configuration Settings, we can just remove the check from that checkbox. And that removes the checks from all these subsections as well. We can collapse that. And we can do the same thing for network configuration to remove the check there, recollapse it, and the same thing for storage configuration, remove the check and recollapse it. And then also for security and services, if we remove the check there, it removes the check from these subcategories as well. So if we had, for example, a firewall configuration element and we wanted it as part of this host profile, we can put the check there regarding firewall configuration, and then anything regarding those settings beneath that subcategory would be part of this host profile, and then we could use this host profile with those settings to verify that all of our ESXi hosts have specific firewall settings. However, for this demonstration, what we're going to do is we are just going to use time configuration. So I'm going to remove the check from the checkbox for general system settings and just go down to date and time, expand that, and then put a check right there. Because all I really want as part of this host profile is the date and time configuration. So if we click on date and time configuration, it shows us the current setting. And this is the setting that ESXi2 had, using an NTP server, a time server, at 192.168.1.100. Let's go ahead and click on Finish. So now it's showing us this host profile has 0 compliant hosts, 0 not compliant hosts, and 0 unknown state hosts. And that's because we haven't used this option right here to associate ESXi host with this profile. So let's go ahead and use that next. So we'll click on this icon right here to attach hosts and associate them with this host profile. And then we can either grab the entire cluster by selecting it and clicking on attach, or we could grab individual ESXi host and click on attach to be associated with this host profile. So with the cluster selected, we'll go ahead and click on attach. That brings all of the ESXi hosts over as well, and we'll click on next. And then we'll click on finish. So at the moment it's saying we have 3 unknown state hosts, and that's because we haven't actually run the compliance check yet against this host profile with those ESXi hosts. And I thought to myself, it's going to be pretty boring if it turns out that all 3 hosts are in compliance with the host profile regarding that NTP setting. So what I'd like to do for a moment is let's hover over the home icon, and from the menu let's click on hosts and clusters to take us to that view. And let's right click on ESXi3. And regarding the action menu for ESXi3, let's click on settings, which turns the focus to ESXi3 and takes us to the configure tab. And let's scroll down under system and we'll click on time configuration. So currently ESXi3 is also using .100 as an NTP server. Let's click on edit and let's go ahead and change this so this host will not be compliant. And let's put in the IP address of 1.2.3.4 for an NTP server. Click OK. And then with ESXi3 select on the left on the configure tab, we'll just verify the time configuration shows 1.2.3.4, and it does. Great. So let's go back to our host profile. We can hover over the home icon, and from the drop down select policies and profiles. And then from here in the navigator column, we'll go ahead and click on host profiles. And with our host profile for NTP highlighted, we'll go ahead and click on this icon right here to check for compliance with the hosts associated with this profile to make sure they're all compliant. So we'll click on that icon, and if we click on recent tasks, it'll show us the current status of all that happening. So it's going to check on ESXi 1, 2, and 3. So now that's completed, we have 2 hosts that are compliant, 1 host that is not compliant, meaning it has a different value for NTP other than what's in the host profile, and we have 0 as unknown state. And the reason the unknown state would show up again is because we simply haven't run the compliance check, so the system can find out whether or not the host is compliant. So regarding this host profile, if we click on it here, or if we click on it here over on the left, it'll bring that to the focus. On the summary tab, it's showing us right here in the recent compliance failures that ESXi3 is not compliant. If we click on the monitor tab, and then we click on the compliance option below that, this also shows us that ESXi3 is not compliant. And here, if we highlight ESXi3, down below it has the details, including the host value currently set regarding the NTP server and what the host profile has. And then it spells out that the list of NTP servers doesn't match the specified list in the host profile. So with ESXi3 highlighted, what we can do is we can go ahead and use this icon right here for remediation, which will allow us to go through and update the non-compliant host, in this case ESXi3, with the correct time server information, which would then make it compliant with the host profile. So with ESXi3 highlighted, we'll click on remediate. There's a button that we can click for pre-check remediation, which can assist us in verifying that ESXi3 is able to be updated with the right parameters. So let's click on pre-check remediation. We'll give that a few moments to complete. There's a little arrow to the left of ESXi3. If we expand that, it indicates what needs to happen, which means we're going to configure the time server to be 192.168.1.100. And then there's an option down here that says reboot host which require it. Now, just changing the NTP server information is not going to require a reboot of the host. However, if you're not sure if the change is required or not, you can go ahead and remove that check from the checkbox. And then if we need to reboot it, we can go ahead and do that through the vSphere web client as opposed to having the system just do it. So with all these in place, we'll click on finish, and then we'll click on recent tasks. And what it's doing is applying the time server information based on our host profile over to ESXi3. And now that that's done, if we minimize recent tasks, it shows that we now have 3 compliant ESXi hosts. And if we wanted to run the check again, we could highlight the cluster or an individual host and then go ahead and click on the check host profile compliance icon right here. That would check again. And if we went back to the configuration for ESXi3 and looked at the time server information, it would now be set to 192.168.1.100. So a host profile is a great tool to help ensure that settings that you want set across ESXi hosts are all done consistently. So now that you and I have created and applied host profiles in this demonstration, I would love it if you'd practice these skills in the hands-on labs that we've provided. And I'll see you in the next video. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.